What's up, guys? Have a little different one for you today. I want to talk about everything to expect in the housing market, especially in Florida in 2022. I'm seeing trends and indicators as pessimistic as the current state we are in. I'm looking out to Q1 of next year. I'm seeing trends and indicators that would lead to say that we're in for a potential alteration and a potential change, right? So we're not 100% positive how this is going to materialize, but we're seeing clear data on inventory, clear data on prices, clear data on the amount of competition, and with perseverance it could get very, very interesting. I'm going to talk all about that today, my thoughts and my experience on those, and let's get into the video. Okay, if you've been participating even slightly or on the fringes of the 2021 housing market, it will be no surprise to you that this market's gotten out of control and is absolutely wacky in this current economic environment. We've seen a normal hot market and normal parts of the year that are typically hot, especially in the Florida area, paired with unprecedented things that have never happened before with COVID and work from home and mass relocations. And this has all contributed to a very, very escalated and increasing over hot market. Multiple offer scenarios with cash buyers, people waiving all contingencies, price escalation clauses, lottery bids and wait lists at builders that have never done it for new construction. All while prices were ramping to create a new foundation that has never been seen in history. And all this craziness was coupled with historic low and remaining stable interest rates. And now, while this video's purpose is not to just give you a depressing monologue, and the market is definitely still hot, we are beginning to see some trends of recent history and some things giving me the inclination to say that things may be cooling off moving forward. With multiple studies showing more inventory starting to hit the market, and with more inventory and less buyers means less competitive market overall. I feel like there might be a case to say that the home market might be much more normal at some point after Q1 of next year. So with the inventory and other similar metrics starting to lend for that case, I thought the timing was appropriate to release a video and talk all about what you can expect in the 2022 housing market. Hey guys, quick interruption. Just wanted to say thank you so much for watching the Sarasota Relocation Guide. If you need anything from us, please reach out. My information will be here. Description box below. Hop around with timestamps. Hope you enjoy the content. Please subscribe if you do. Thank you. Okay, number one on what to expect in next year's housing market, a more friendly, somewhat buyer's market. This year has 100% been characterized by an over-competitive environment paired with inventory at historic lows on a consistent basis. But over the last 3 months, pre-August, we've seen consistent increases in inventory levels across many states. And this is something we haven't seen in a very long time. All this is going to lend itself to, say, a little bit more balanced market. Now, I'm not saying that all of a sudden this thing's gonna flip and buyers are gonna have some huge advantage, right? I think sellers are still gonna have a ton of opportunity in 2022 from an equity position, definitely depending on which specific market you are in. But I do think that inventory and just old school real estate rules, inventory leveling out and people having a few more options, not needing to make desperate contingency waiving offers as frequently and less people competing for the same home will start to level and balance out the equation next year. And a little bit more balance means a little less stressful time competing for offers, especially if you're using financing, which is going to be music to a lot of folks' ears. And all of this, and the days of 50 plus cash offers at $700,000 and people waiving all kinds of crazy things and doing anything the sellers were asked for, as we alleviate some of that, I think it'll give a lot more people opportunities in next year's market. All right, number two, one of the things I would not expect is prices to drop. So although we do have a less competitive environment, the amount, in my opinion, the amount of buyers and resistance and the amount of sellers inventory it would take for these things to swing back so hard that buyers have some sort of grand advantage all of a sudden would have to be tremendous. And I do not think the amount of people in this market will lend to that being possible within a 16-month cycle. Now, one of the hopes would be, one, getting an opportunity in general, I think, is a win in this kind of competitive environment if you're getting used to the current prices. But we do have some studies, that one study saying that year over year they could predict a 3.2% or so increase in home values, and then there's other studies that say 10 to 12%, so that's a little bit across the board. But economist-wise, a lot of the consensus is that the trend of increasing prices should go at a slower pace. So what you can do now versus what you can do 6 months from now should be easier to be even to each other, even though you're not going to get some sort of advantage all of a sudden. It will go at a slower pace. I've been talking about this a lot with builders, right? If you're in phase one of a new community now and they're jumping these price buckets at base prices, 30 grand every 2 sales, and they have 5 years left to build on this 4 to 5 phase community, right? They can't increase so much in phase 1 and 2 that appraisal values and just human nature value in general to the family model of certain homes, what it will be in phase 5 if they keep this trend won't be doable because they can't sell those houses cheaper later to someone in the same neighborhood on the same street. So again, I think if you temper your expectation of no one's going to get some advantage, right? But if you temper your expectation and say it's a win to say that I don't need to get fake urgency behind a purchase because I can replicate something at a later point I could do now, the risk to you is that it will never be cheaper. So any waiting means that best case it stays the same, but there's a bigger risk that at least a couple points it's going to be more expensive. But not doing something before you're ready, I think this argument would really play here. Okay, number 3, another thing to expect in next year's housing market is buyers can be prepared for a more normal contractual process. So this year, with the overburden of buyers and the lack of inventory, I don't think people have probably, unless you've been just in the game competing for resales, I don't think people even realize how crazy things have gotten on both lottery bids at new construction and the contract itself. And with the cash is king and all these old rules, that's existing at well over $1 million. And now with all the leverage points people had from liquidity, it doesn't mean as much because everyone's doing it. So you've got people I would do it as if I was a seller too, but you have people guaranteeing an outcome, right? So you write a contract and they say it has to be on a standard contract. People are waiving their inspection, which is contingency number 1. They're asking for real high earnest money. So you have a 3-day term to submit your earnest money, right? And that's the money that's up for grabs if someone's negligent. And then they're waiving the appraisal and there's no financing. So 0 walk away kind of room, right? And it's a guarantee because there's no inspection. So you're truly buying that property as is. And then you're competing with like 50 people to do it. So that just jumps the price. There's no appraisal. So it doesn't matter what it's worth. It's just what it's worth to the market. That's messed up a lot of pricing here, but it's just perspective of if someone's in New York or California or Canada and they're paying way more and they're paying way more for property taxes, they know they're overpaying versus what this should be versus what the person paid for it 3 years ago, but it doesn't matter because the landed cost is better for their personal situation, and that messes with all kinds of market dynamics because it's not what it should be, right? So a lot of that's just too many people in the market. So the minute that there's not 50 people competing for a house, there's 2 or 3. Maybe one's cash and they went lower than list price, a couple are financing, and then it lets you leverage normal things that we would have done a couple of years ago, where if you're financing, as long as it'll appraise, you can go higher than the cash person, and you can try to make your terms attractive, and you can win on liquidity or something like that. But what this market's going to do and what it's going to swing back is it'll let you do a normal process, right? We can get back to 7 to 10 day inspections. If you use financing, which even for just how cheap it is right now, it's not the worst thing in the world. It doesn't completely take you out of the game, and you can just do a normal contract. And the seller's going to review all those kind of things, and you can still win on terms, but it's not a guarantee you're out of the game if you're unwilling to do something that you deem unreasonable. So I think that balance is going to be really important. That's what I mean by a more pleasant contractual environment. And what we need here is we need less people competing for the same house, which lets us maybe act the right way. Okay, number 4, another thing I would not expect moving forward in the next year is mortgage rates to remain at their all-time lows. So part of the insane frenzy in 2020 and 2021 was the drop of the mortgage rates to historic lows, right? So people jumped at the chance to get these 2.7, 2.8, 2.9% rates both on a primary mortgage but also on a refinance of a mortgage because, you know, in certain scenarios, even a couple years ago, if you had a 4.5% or a 5%, which at that time was deemed low in 2018 or 19, then, you know, you could potentially cut off, you know, $100 or so of a monthly payment. In the refinance, you could pull cash out, you could do repairs. So it was a pretty interesting option for a lot of folks. And I've talked about this a lot. While people do make purchases because they think they'll never get that opportunity again, this isn't something I would necessarily, unless these things were going to 10%, right? This isn't something I would necessarily do something I wasn't going to do anyway. But I might do it a little quicker. But I do see these things, they're going to start ticking up. I think it's going to take a while. And I think even at the end of next year, potentially we're sitting at just 4% overall, maybe not even there. There's studies that are saying 3.2, 3.5. So again, I don't know if this forces me to do something I wasn't ready for. A lot of our folks are only using cash financing as leverage anyway, just because it's so inexpensive. But we do see that it's going to creep, and if you're really banking on like a 2.9 to 3%, especially if that's the fringes of your affordability and your debt to income ratio, then I do think this is by the end of next year, it's going to mature closer to that 4% range. So number 4 is just something to think about, because higher interest rates applied to a principal of a house that costs more money as a percentage basis does mean higher average monthly cost. All right, number 5, another thing to expect for next year, the suburbs to remain hot. So this one's been a pretty interesting dynamic, and we've really felt this in Sarasota in kind of a way you might not be thinking about. So what happened in major cities is like Illinois and New Jersey and New York, cities that are very much dependent, especially for young people, but all people really. A lot of the jobs congregate in the main urban districts, right? But those are the same districts that are very hard to live in from an affordability standpoint and very hard to live in from a family standpoint, right? Just the dynamics of like the live, work, play doesn't work for a lot of folks, either monetarily or just lifestyle-wise. So what happened with the work from home thing, so COVID hits, this huge work from home push goes, and especially this like this feeling of permanence, right? Like even when this comes back, my employer is definitely going to keep it, or I don't care if they keep it or not, this is how I'm going to do it now. So we had people in cities like, or all these northeastern counties that were like moving from like downtown Chicago out to the suburbs. They had condos and townhomes and that kind of thing. They were going to suburban housing. And then what we had is we had these people in the suburbs where the value was okay, right? But it was far from town. So the value for resale was okay. But then it just went absolute gangbusters because the push to the suburbs caused these people to say, oh my gosh, if I liquidate now, I'm going to be in an incredible position. And so then they said, what can I do with all this money, right? Well, I'm working from home too, so I'm going to retire, or I'm not going to retire, but I'm going to go, I was retiring in 5 years, I'm going to move to Florida in advance, and I'm going to take advantage of this equity. My homeowner's insurance and my taxes and my escrowed mortgage is twice what I'm paying, half the cost it would be in Florida versus what I'm paying now. Everything, right? All the landed costs. So they're jumping ship and creating a huge frenzy in Florida that never existed, because all these people are supposed to do it during the year that they were originally supposed to retire, which would create a normal market annually. They all came at once, and then people got tired of the politics, came as well, and then it just created too many people in the market, and then everything got weird versus what it used to be. So the suburbs in a nutshell, and like a Lakewood Ranch here, or a middle of Sarasota, or a Wesley Chapel, these areas became extremely attractive because now you have a suburb that's 30 minutes from the beach. You can get a ton of house versus what you're used to in a big city. And these people are living an hour and a half from any sort of like civilization right now. So overall, I think that dynamic is not going to change. And this is only going to get more attractive for the regular person. Okay, and our 6th and final point. One thing to not expect is a magic pill. I'm super empathetic at this point, right? I've been in this market the whole time. I get it. It's not my money. I get it, there's not as much at stake for me, but I have so many data points. I'm talking to people, I'm a fiduciary, all of my people live out of state. I get it, I saw where the market was, I saw where it's trending, I get where it's at now. I'm completely empathetic to like things do not make sense in theory, but I would say I think there's going to be relief. I just don't think it's going to be instant, and I think it's going to be one of those things where you get to the end of 2022, early 2023, and you look at the year over year, and it looks like a huge variance, but it's not going to feel that way if you're actually in it, and it's very frustrating. The people that I'm seeing winning are just, it's perseverance, right? So it's being not romantic about it. That's what I would say, even if you're 6 months away, there's no harm in actually viewing the whole market right now, right? And being it as a part of the tracking process, so you're in the mind space to be able to transact when it's appropriate for you, right? And again, like, I'm not an urgency guy, I'm not a rush guy. All I'm trying to do is be beside you guys when it's right to make the decision, and we're just being a data source to that, right? But I think one thing to do here would be really, if you could step back and be not romantic about the process, and be like, if it's Sarasota or broke, right, or Gulf Coast, or I'm not doing anything, then there's a lot of ways to do things. It's not as dire as it may seem. I think a lot of people are pessimistic about this, and I'm not a part of the Debbie Downer approach. I think you just got to cascade with the market, right? If they want to do lottery bids, fine. If there's multiple offers, fine, right? But it's the same cap of money. It's the same approach. And logistically, we can veer, but it's the same idea of trying to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. So I would say, to kind of wrap this video, if you can kind of if you can, I get it, right? If you can kind of eventually get to that mindset, it would be extremely helpful. And yeah, that's what I would say about that. All right, guys, that wraps this video on what to expect in the housing market, especially in Florida in 2022. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you added you some value. We're gonna try to do a little bit more trend videos in real time in the future. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. Please hit the like button. It really helps us out. Please check out my description box below. I have statistical tools. I have timestamps. I have relocation guides and anything else you can imagine. And then lastly, if you need anything at all from us, please reach out directly. My phone number and information will be right here. The whole team would love to help you, and we'll see you on the next one.